Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning is former Republican state senator and political strategist Garrett Mason and Democratic activist and host of Maine's Black Future podcast, Genius Black. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Morning. All right, first up, Senator Susan Collins and Angus King introducing legislation that will require the Army to use state crisis intervention laws to remove the weapons of a service member. It's, of course, in response to the mass shootings in Lewiston nearly a year ago. It would be used if a service member is deemed to be a serious threat to themselves or others. In Maine, this means the military operating here would have to follow the state's yellow flag law.
I believe it would save lives, including potentially the life of that service member. So it would make our communities safer, and it would also help that service member who's in crisis get the assistance that he or she needs.
Now, Garrett, we'll start with you. Collins has said that this bill, had it been enacted prior to the shooting, would have prevented that gunman from having the guns. Do you agree with her?
I think it very much could have played a role in making it a better outcome. I can tell you this, I've said this on this show a few times, the military has a massive mental health crisis that they have to deal with. And I think the military is obviously a huge and important organization in our government, but the mental health of service members is paramount, and the Lewiston report shows holes all through their process, local sheriff's processes. So I think Senator Collins is right. Like, I applaud her for putting the legislation in, and I think that putting our military's feet to the fire and making sure that our service members' mental health is okay is important.
Absolutely. And Genius, the Maine Gun Safety Coalition this week launched a campaign to try and get the red flag law on the ballot and to voters. Obviously, that wouldn't be this November. It'd be the following year if it comes to fruition. But is this an every little bit helps scenario?
I believe that it is. I think that we were caught off guard in Maine when it came to what happened in Lewiston. Unfortunately, there's been even more shootings around the country since then. So we have to keep our quote unquote foot on the gas with finding resolutions, actions, creating safe moments. For me, I don't know if the law already being in place would have saved all the lives or any lives in what happened in Lewiston. However, I do think that moving forward, if we skip steps that we know we can take, then more things start to fall on us. And so I see them taking action. And I also see this better flow of information. And that's one of the keys for me. Not police coming out to a situation and not being equipped with critical information that can help them to decide or behave differently at that check-in. So I think it's a good step, and yeah, step by step, that's what we have to do.
I think one thing that you mentioned the red flag constitutional citizens initiative. That's kind of an issue, and this is one of the things that needs to be paid attention to in these type of conversations. Is that no matter how you feel about a red flag law, debate that in the legislature. There's a lot of constitutional flags in that legislation nationwide that have been challenged and struck down by courts. So I think it's a little bit of false hope to put that in front of people and say we should do this. The legislature has no opportunity to change that legislation when it gets on the ballot and make sure that if the people actually do want that it meets constitutional muster. So I think that's an example of things that we shouldn't do. To give people false hope about something that can't happen.
Well, we'll see what happens next legislative session for sure. And speaking of Senator Susan Collins, she was one of 2 Republicans this week to vote in favor of legislation to protect IVF, but the bill ultimately failed in the Senate. It would have established broad protections and nationwide rights for people to access in vitro fertilization treatments and allow health providers to offer those services. Genius, IVF has become a huge issue, of course, with abortion, reproductive rights on the ballot, but should Republicans budge on this issue?
I actually think they have to. I think that the bioethics is up for debate by many people. It's kind of an intense debate, and everyone doesn't fall on the same side, and that's whether they're a Republican or Democrat. So I do think it's an issue. I think there's a lot of confusion, honestly, and I think that to be honest, there's a bit of clamoring of trying to align so that we can do this election thing, because some people really are supporters of IVF and what it can do in an amazing way to support family growth and even establishing a family. And there's some people who just ideologically, the way that IVF works will never sit well with them. So I believe there's a lot of, I don't want to call it infighting, but there's disagreement inside. So I just think that's where they are right now.
Garrett?
I think this is Chuck Schumer playing political games with families' futures. There is no rational Republican that is saying that we should ban IVF. There is no rational Republican that's saying that. I agree with the bioethics
But
conversation. There is some, but it's also like saying that there are, all Democrats are for 40-week abortions. That's just not true. So, I mean, I do agree with some of what Genius said about bioethics. There are some things to be considered as far as fertilized embryos that are frozen and never taken advantage of. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But this is Chuck Schumer playing political games, because Katie Britt and Ted Cruz put in a bill way before the one that was voted on in the Senate that would have done largely the same things. And Chuck Schumer put poison pills into that bill to make Republicans go on the record opposing it. So if Chuck Schumer actually wants to get something done, then sit at the table. Republicans are waiting, they're listening, they put the bill in first, and this is Chuck Schumer playing games with families' futures,
Senator
and it's wrong.
Susan Collins is a Republican, and she voted for it.
And she did, but with Senator Collins is trying to get something done, and she was voting for that bill because of the importance of ensuring IVF. And as usual, Senator Collins leading from the front.
All right, here in Maine, debate continues over paid family leave with just 4 months until it goes into effect.
The reality is that people take time off anyway when they have babies or when they have emergencies. They just don't get paid for it currently.
Starting in January, all employees and employers will start paying 0.5% of their payroll into a fund. Then in 2026, that money will be used to support paid medical leave. In a hearing this week, the Maine State Chamber of Commerce continued to call for more flexibility for business owners. Under the new law, companies can reject a leave request if it causes undue hardship. But the rules say this does not apply if an employee has given 30 days notice before taking leave. Genius, obviously, a lot of confusion here. It's a done deal, but does the risk for businesses outweigh the benefit for families?
I don't believe that it does, but I am for more clarity. I like that they've had multiple sessions for people answering questions and giving feedback, but I think that it's very important to hold on to the human element of these things. These policies will be pervasive, they will spread across the state, and it will become, over years, exactly how these people's lives works. So for me, I know that there's risk for businesses, but taking care of people and allowing them to take care of their families while still being compensated, not letting their life fall apart financially, I think is a high priority for Mainers.
Garrett?
I think there's a lot of businesses in our state, I wish I could name them on TV, but I won't, that are doing really good jobs of providing these benefits themselves and don't need a government program that is very undefined at the moment, telling them how to take care of their employees. There are some fabulous examples of that happen. The law doesn't exactly take that into account. They're still trying to figure out how to make sure that those employers don't have to pay double. You also have the situation with part-time workers. Maine's a seasonal place. We're a vacation place. 120 days, you're working for about 120 days in a seasonal job. You're actually working about 140. So what happens when you hit 120, you come to the end of the season, you take paid family medical leave. That's a situation that very much can arise and has been pointed out by many employers. I think this is a program that's going to continue to grow, and it's going to have to change. At the public hearing, a bunch of people showed up, including some interest groups. I think that they brought up some good points, and the department has shown some willingness to change the rules. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. It's going to be expensive for employers.
All right. Finally, the U.S. Energy Secretary was in Maine this week. Jennifer Granholm visited South Portland with Governor Mills to announce the launch of a new rebate program. $71.7 million in federal funding will go toward the 2 different energy rebate programs, both with the goal of helping households, including manufactured and multifamily homes, to upgrade to clean energy equipment like heat pumps. Eligible homeowners will be able to save as much as $14,000 on upgrades through those rebates.
So one of the great things that these programs are doing is inviting people and providing rebates to people to incorporate heat pumps in their homes and other energy-saving appliances that are more affordable. It'll save you money in pocket.
Now, Garrett, this is more Inflation Reduction Act funding we're talking about here. Is this a good thing?
I think so. I mean, Maine is one of the state. It is the state that uses the most oil to heat our homes. I think transitioning towards electric heat pumps is a good thing. It works great. A lot of people don't like lugging their air conditioners in and out of their windows in Maine every summer, and this is a great option to not do that, and also keep you warm in the winter. But it brings up another point. if we're going to electrify everything, we have to do a better job of providing more opportunities to create energy. And I think in Maine, we struggle with that. We proposals like the NECEC, you get up, come down. And renewables, right now we're pumping out about 7% of our energy needs through renewables, and we need to do more all of the above approach to facilitate things like this.
But Genius, on the issue of heat pumps specifically and just the cost to heat your home, this is something that impacts low-income families, marginalized communities, right?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of people that are most vulnerable in the winter or throughout the year are folks, in terms of saving this money, being able to upgrade homes, buy a new home, and then maybe upgrade something that gets it ready for the long-term future. It really will benefit folks who don't have a lot of money, who don't have all the choices of where to live and having multiple houses. So for me, I'm actually a big fan of this personally, never mind my own heating bills. But I guess I would just have to say I actually agree with most of what you said.
Well, good.
I'm glad. Well, we'll end with agreement there. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. We're out of time. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning is former Republican state senator and political strategist Garrett Mason and Democratic activist and host of the Maine's Black Future podcast, Genius Black. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
First this week, federal officials are investigating suspicious mail sent to election officials in several states. The Secretary of State's office says Maine was not among those targeted, but they had initially claimed they were before getting more information from investigators. The USPS says several secretaries of state across the country did receive those suspicious packages, though. Garrett, we're going to start with you. A little bit of a misstep on the Secretary of State's office part, pushing this story out. Still, though, a serious problem across the country.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a misstep as much as it is heightened awareness. I think Shenna, I served with Shenna in the legislature. She's a wonderful person, and I would never want anything bad to happen to her. But I think it really shows the heightened political environment that we're in, and that we're facing unprecedented times. I feel like that's said in every election, but I actually believe that it is true. And I think there's just a lot of people with very heavy emotions and strong feelings, but I'm glad that she's safe, and I'm glad her staff is safe, and I'm glad that it wasn't true.
And Genius, this has become an incredibly divisive political season.
That's true, and I think that these mailings, or even if they didn't happen, is really a sign of the political times. People are triggered, people are upset, people are afraid. And I think this is part of the juice that's being spewed all over Americans right now. I think in a previous segment I said that jumping into the political race when you don't need to, or making comments right now, is dirty work because it's very volatile times. I'm glad that folks are safe. That's really good to even hear that kind of weird shift. But right now we're dealing with all of these news of violence spilling over and potentially harming people, and it's scary.
Yeah, and speaking of that violence, there is continued fallout and frustration after the second apparent assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump.
Golf is a very dangerous game. Really?
Former president making light of it there, of course, but if you missed it, a man camped out at Trump's Florida golf course last weekend for 12 hours with a rifle. Fortunately, he was caught by Secret Service and taken into custody, but it has contributed to the intensity of the presidential race. Genius, the question here, though, will this actually impact how people vote, specifically those staunch Trump supporters who might see him as this victim in this case?
Yes, I mean, the people that support him the strongest, I think, will see this as just another notch in his belt of being a hero, of just being an underdog and being someone who can live through whatever. I do think that there will be some other Republicans who just, it's going to be a reminder, and all the language that's following it is saying whose fault it is, which they're saying without really knowing all the details, that it's the Democrats. So I do think that will solidify some people to either move closer to Donald Trump or maybe to make that final decision if I'm completely honest about it, yes.
And Garrett, the Trump campaign has tried to blame Democrats for this. What rhetoric are they specifically talking about?
I think the Trump campaign actually put an excellent commercial out that showed 2 minutes of Republicans calling Donald Trump a threat, calling him Hitler, calling him a Nazi, saying that democracy is over if Donald Trump is get elected. There's a whole montage of clips, and these aren't fringe Democrats, these are mainline Democrats. That's the kind of rhetoric they're talking about. Do I think it's going to affect the election? Yes, I do. The first assassination attempt, and I can't believe I have to say the first assassination attempt, that got memory hold. I mean, let's just be honest about it. People weren't talking about it after Kamala Harris. And now you have the second one, and it's bringing those images back of the first time. And I think it shows that President Trump is right. And in a lot of factors, he has been right about the target that is on his back.
Meantime, Vice President Kamala Harris made some waves when talking about guns in an event with Oprah this week. Take a listen.
When you said you have guns, no, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
Garrett, some surprising words from the Vice President there.
Listen, good for her, if that's true. If somebody comes in your house and threatens your family, I think you should be able to protect yourself. But let's be honest. The reason that Kamala Harris is saying this is because she's losing and because she's said a lot of things in the past about gun buyback programs, about having a conversation about repealing the Second Amendment. She's said a lot of things that are very not what you just heard. And so it's another example of Kamala Harris not knowing where she stands. I think Oprah was blown away that she just said that on her show. But I hope that she is a gun owner. I hope Tim Walz is a gun owner. But let's be honest, they both have Secret Service protection. And so let's talk about real Americans, what they're facing and the threats that they are facing.
Genius, in Maine, Harris is winning. A new Pan-Atlantic research poll shows Harris leading Trump in Maine 50% to 41%. Are you surprised by that?
No. I'm not surprised at all. Hold on, I'm sorry. I just want to say that Donald Trump talks a lot of violent rhetoric regularly. I just wanted that to be in the air because we talked about it a second ago. I think that
what kind of rhetoric?
Well, we can talk about what he said about the Haitian folks in Ohio and what that's turning into.
Why is it violent, though?
Because it's based in racism and it's untrue.
Okay.
And because if you're at that position of power and you say those things out loud, then you have KKK people in the city dropping leaflets and flyers because they are looking to ride those coattails of anger and hatred. And that's what's happening.
I think I would view that a little differently. I think J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have both said that these are reports from constituents. And those are the things that they've said.
Time and time again, including by the Republican governor.
By who?
By the city manager, the Republican governor of that state.
So we should only believe city managers. I'm not here to say it's true or not, but we're talking about violent rhetoric. And that it's
I think we're talking about racist rhetoric here,
which can lead to violence. Let's be honest. I mean, the history of America, violence and racism are kind of cousins. That's part of our history.
Okay, that's fine, but violence doesn't mean racism. Like I'm sorry, I completely disagree with that.
I would agree with that statement. Yes.
I'm not saying that those can't be equal, but violence can go along with a lot of things and not just racism. But I mean, we got off topic on it. But I mean, sorry,
it's important. Yeah. But on the issue of Kamala Harris and these remarks, she's leading in Maine. Obviously not in the 2nd district, but are you surprised by this lead? Is that polling? I mean, that's pretty significant, 50% to 41% in this new poll, Garrett.
I think one of the biggest interest points in it is that you had campaigns both coming in 2016 and 2020 to win their respective votes, right? Like win the Northern District or win the Southern 3. Right. And you don't have the campaigns here at all, and nothing has changed. And so I think that is interesting. Not surprised by those numbers. Basically, everything stayed the same. So,
And finally, House Republicans shot down their own funding bill with a government shutdown just 2 weeks away. The bill, which was Speaker Mike Johnson's 6-month resolution and SAVE Act plan, failed by a 202 to 220 vote, 2 people voting present. Johnson's plan called for extending funding for 6 months through March of 2025, but it was linked with Donald Trump's SAVE Act, which requires people to show proof of citizenship to register to vote. Now, Genius even had Democratic Congressman Jared Golden voting in favor of that legislation, but we're getting awfully close to election season here. Election day, rather, here.
Exactly. And I think part of the pause, I think, is due to Donald Trump and kind of his influence. And I would even have to harken back to conversation, about what Donald Trump said about Haitian immigrants and stoking this fear and this belief that our country has been artificially inflated by people who are illegal and criminals and shouldn't be allowed to vote. When I think about politicians attaching a sidecar that says, hey, we got to really go hard on IDs to make sure these people, to me, that's bad faith. I think this is actually a non-issue when it comes to that. But I do see these things working in lockstep. Donald Trump said that, things explode, and now there's all this concern about who can vote. And they slow things down with the government.
Garrett?
I don't think it's sudden concern. I think it's been a consistent concern. I think at most every developed country in the world requires a passport to vote in their elections, including France, the UK. Virtually every one of our allies requires some sort of ID to vote. So I'm not sure it's a new claim. I think it's very standard. I think it's something that Republicans have argued for a long time. However, I think you're right. It is political shenanigans. I think attaching these things to bills, that's exactly what they did with the IVF situation in the Senate. And so that is why I think we control elections locally. Each state knows what's best for their state. So it's not going anywhere. Everybody knew that. There's a lot of people, Republicans, who claimed it. I applaud Jared Golden for voting for it.
All right, let's wrap things up with winners, losers. Genius, here first.
I really, in terms of winners, I look at Janet Mills and Susan Collins and Angus King, and for me, going back to the Notification Act in terms of how we're moving forward with we'll say the yellow flag laws. I think that really them co-sponsoring that was something that Mainers needed to see. But beyond Mainers, I love that now what's happening with this bill is that it's going to protect people all across the United States. So that is an example of Mainers leading. I would have to say for losers, and I've been thinking about this, and again, I know we don't see eye to eye on this, but I think that Donald Trump leaning into racist rhetoric and lies about Haitian immigrants or any immigrants inside the United States, knowing how people feel about them and how he's previously been stoking fear, is a loser move. I don't like that politicians use that type of fear to leverage people and to stoke flames of fear to try to get elected. I think it's gross.
All right, Garrett.
I think my winner this week is Austin Terrio. In that the Pan-Atlantic poll you just showed, I showed him up 3 points in CD2. I don't think that Jared Golden has ever been behind at this point in a race. So I think he's probably the big winner of the week. I think the loser of the week is Karine Jean-Pierre. Just shortly after an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, she called him a threat. And fortunately, she was called out on that. But I think that's the type of rhetoric that is inciting some of these things, and I don't think that was a winner move.
I think the takeaway this week on both sides is words matter.
That's
Gentlemen,
right.
Thank you so much. And that's going to do it for this week's Political Brew. The Morning Report is back right after this.